Herod was an Edomite. I mean, now, Paul takes that promise to Abraham, father of many nations, and he uses it. He applies it. He talks about it in Romans. And what I'm going to show you is that Paul takes that in a spiritual meaning, where when he, first of all, he establishes that Christ is the seed par excellence. He is the seed, and Paul even makes a play on that, a drash, where he says the promise isn't to seeds as to many, but to seed, that it might be to Christ. You know, it's one person, and then what happens is you have to come into Christ as his body under that headship to be considered the seed of Abraham. Okay, that's the new thing. Now, watch Jason DeCosta's mindset. He takes where Paul says, if you are Christ, you are Abraham's seed in Galatians. Okay. In the video, like I said, I couldn't find the original video where he made the claim about Goyim being that could refer to Israel. I found one that's about a month old, but it's called "The Truth About the Word Gentile and What They Never Told You." So go and watch that video, and I'm going to comment on various places. But in here, he tackles that in Galatians, where Paul says, if you belong to Christ, you are Abraham's seed. What's interesting is at the 6 minute and 37 second marker of that video, DeCosta says Abraham's seed must be interpreted consistently in the same way it was understood in the Old Testament. Really? There's another fundamentalist style mandate. I mean, why? I mean, really? Let me give you things which shift in meaning that you would even agree with. You have to agree with from the Old Testament, New Testament. Jerusalem. Right now, Jerusalem, are you saying that the Jerusalem in that particular geography on earth, terra firma, that went up in flames in AD 70 is the Jerusalem that entered into fulfillment and was the Jerusalem that was the Jerusalem from above that inherited all the promises to Zion? No. That Jerusalem became Babylon. How could the earthly city of Jerusalem become Babylon? And then we hear this new Jerusalem that is above, and we see in Revelations that it comes down. Where is this new Jerusalem? Is it on earth, Jason? He would say, no, man. No, it's not. It's up in, according to the narrative, it's up there, and it's not down here. All right, so we have a shift in meaning where the meaning of Jerusalem in the New Testament means something very different from the Jerusalem in the Old Testament. So you're wrong. Let's have some other examples. Circumcision. The circumcision that Paul talks about, where he's actually justifying Gentiles for not being circumcised. And he says that their uncircumcision can count as circumcision. That's an interesting thing. So he called the uncircumcision that counts as circumcision the circumcision of the heart, which is not of the flesh. Now, granted, there are some references in the Old Testament that talks about circumcise your hearts, okay? But Paul, the returning Gentiles, the Gentiles that were coming into the church, which would contain, returning people that, if you could look at their 700-year-old DNA, they could be traced, most definitely. But they didn't have to be circumcised. Paul's gospel was clear that they didn't have to be circumcised because their uncircumcision counted as circumcision, the circumcision of the heart. All right, so Passover. Passover was a literal lamb slaughtered and put on the cross. All right. So that's a difference, okay? That's a difference from the Old Testament. In the Old Testament, it was an animal. Church, ecclesia, which is the Greek form of kahal in the Old Testament, the assembly of Israel that was in the wilderness. That changed, all right, because they're no longer in the wilderness with a literal tabernacle being led by a guy named Moses. All right, it's now, and okay, let's put it in your terms, first century. Let's keep it first century. It was a spiritual assembly. It was composed of many different nations that what was that? What was that? Oh, all right, I just had to check. My girls are upstairs playing. I heard a crash. Temple changed. If you look at the temple theology and from the Old Testament to the New Testament, the temple was, in the New Testament, was the assembly, the people of God, the body of Christ. That was the temple of living stones, okay? Different from the temple. So things change, Jason. So that blows your argument out of the water. The seed of Abraham cannot be interpreted any differently. It cannot be reinterpreted in light of fulfillment. No. That's bunk, wrong, proved you're wrong, sorry. Now, Jason also paraphrases Paul in such a way to stack the cards. This is Jason's paraphrase. If you are Christ, it's because you are Abraham's seed. So what he's done is if you take the first part of the verse, label it as A, and the second half is B, what he's done is he's taken the logic of B and kind of done it. And so whereas in the actual verse, what Paul is saying is, if you belong to Christ, that's the first thing to consider. We're not getting to the point of whether you're Abraham's seed or not yet. First, we have to determine, are you in Christ? If you are in Christ, then you are Abraham's seed. What Jason does is he paraphrases that, changes the meaning, and says, if you are Christ, it's only because you are the physical descendant of Abraham. Because you came to Christ, that proves your DNA. So, the problem with that, not only is it a mishandling of the scriptures, but he rips it out of context. Because if you look at the context, which I think it's worth getting into right now. Boy, this video is getting pretty long, and I have so much to get to. Where are we? If you, I wish I had some music right now to play while I'm looking things up, because I'm terrible. Terrible memory. It's part of being old. Okay, here we go. 3. Let's read the whole context. For you are all sons. Okay, so he comes back and Paul uses, when he says, but before faith came, we were kept. So he's referring we. He's not saying you. He's saying we. Paul is representing to the Gentiles. He's representing the perspective of the people that were the people of God and what they went through. The Gentiles didn't go through this. Paul did, the Jews did, and he's trying to speak from that perspective because he's talking about when they were under the law. And he says, before faith came, we, as in my people, okay, the covenant people of God, we were kept under guard by the law, kept for the faith which would be afterward be revealed. Therefore, the law was our tutor to bring us to Christ. And if I would put something in there, now that we've been brought to Christ, we're bringing you to Christ, that we might be justified by faith. But after faith has come, we are no longer under a tutor. Then he says, for you, now he's talking about you. He says, for you are all sons of God. Not just the Jews, but everybody in Christ. He says, for you are all sons of God through faith in Jesus Christ. For as many of you as were baptized into Christ have put on Christ. There's no ethnic thing now. There's neither Jew nor Gentile or Greek. There's neither slave nor free. There's neither male nor female. Let me tell you something. If this was Israel only, why would Paul be saying there is neither Jew nor Greek? And Jason, that thing about the Greek word for Greek, Helen, saying that that means that it's a Greek-speaking Jew, that's wrong. That's wrong. Look it up in any Greek dictionary. It refers to any Greek people. Now, am I denying that there were some Greek-speaking people that could trace their DNA to Ephraim? No, not at all. But I'm just speaking about the word Helen, Helenos. There's neither Jew nor Greek. There's neither slave nor free. There's neither male nor female. For you are all one in Christ. So he's trying to get away from all these distinctions that people make on race, on gender, on economic status. And he says, if you are Christ, okay, this is why it doesn't matter. Because if you belong to Christ, you are Abraham's seed and heirs according to the promise. All right. Now, is it because if we were to put in there that and say that it's the same meaning in the Old Testament, say that where Paul's saying, no, if you belong to Christ, you are Abraham's physical seed, then he's totally going against the whole context of the passage, which was to stop thinking in terms of ethnicity and start thinking about Christ, because everything is Christocentric. So DaCosta wants us to say, it's not about whether you're a Jew or a Gentile. It doesn't have anything to do with genealogy. And if you are Christ, then you are the genealogical descendant of Abraham physically, as it was in the Old Testament, as opposed to just Gentiles. See, notice how that's just a fundamentalistically oriented way of hermeneutic skill on display here. And heirs according to the promise. So what Paul is doing is he's saying it's not to seeds, it's to seed. So he makes it about Christ. And then once it's about Christ, then all it means is, then since he's the seed, if you are the body of the seed, you are part of the seed. You are the seed of Abraham, okay? And hence you are the nations that you are now. As nations get converted to Christ, Abraham spiritually becomes father of many nations. All right. I want to make one more point. I'm up to 44 minutes, and I'm worried about what YouTube is going to allow me to upload, so I'm going to be quick about this. Back to what the truth about the what DaCosta talks about Goy and Goyim. Goy, yes, at times it does refer to Israel. It doesn't take a brain science to figure out why that is. Israel was a nation. Okay, Goy means nation. However, wherever the plural form is, Goyim, it means nations, okay? And yes, in a few episodes where the view is nations including Israel, yes, Israel can be part of that designation of the nations. But Israel was always accounted in most places in context as apart from the nations. Okay, so you had Israel and you had the nations, which in Hebrew is ha-goyim, ha-goyim, ha-goyim. Wherever ha-goyim is found, it never, ever, in any context ever refers to Israel. It's always pagan nations. I want you, Jason DaCosta, to look up, because I know you don't read Hebrew, look up in a Hebrew lexicon or something, interlinear, Strong's, whatever, the word ha-goyim, the phrase ha-goyim. And I want you to look in every single reference of it and try to find me one where it ever refers to Israel. Thank you, okay? The Greek, the plural form, ha-goyim, its equivalent in Greek is ta-ethne, okay? The Hebrew ha-goyim in the Old Testament reflects foreign nations, not worshiping the true God, pagan, Gentiles. The Goyim never refer to Israel or Israelites, ha-goyim, okay? The plural of ethnos does not always refer. Now here's an interesting thing. Ethnos is like the singular, which is a cognate of the Hebrew goy, okay? The plural of ethnos does not always refer to people groups, which is interesting. The plural form can also refer to individuals within these people groups. Let me give you a couple examples. And this is pretty fascinating, and it's let's look at Acts 13:48. Again, in both groupings of these passages, the same plural form is ethne, okay? Acts 13:48. Let's see what Acts 13:48 says. Now, when the Gentiles heard this, they were glad and glorified the Lord. Now, substitute in that nations, because it is plural, right? And I'm going to show you where the same plural word has to refer to nations, not individuals. Here, it's got to be individuals. It's talking, because if you plug in 48, if you plug in nations here, he's speaking. It's in the context of preaching, and Gentiles, individuals are coming to Christ. Plug it in there. Now, when the nations heard this, the nations, are we talking about that there was a mass announcement to literal people, geographic people groups that are out in the Mediterranean world? No, that doesn't work. That's why the word which you castigate has been interpreted wrong. No, it hasn't. Gentiles, even though that's a plural, that has to refer to individuals here. And that's the Latin gentili, Gentiles. That's how it's used here, okay? And it refers to individuals of a particular group, okay? Not the group itself, although in other places, the same plural is used to refer to the groups. Okay, let's go to Acts 13:19. 13:19. And when he had destroyed 7 nations, ethne, okay, same word, plural, 7 nations. Is this individuals? And when he had destroyed 7 individuals in the land of Canaan. Ooh, the Holocaust under Joshua was just 7 individuals, 7 Gentiles. 7 Gentiles were slaughtered. That was a great invasion by Joshua. Wow, he slaughtered 7 individuals. No, that's why in this translation it doesn't say Gentiles. It uses nations, even though it's the same exact Greek word. What you don't understand, and I'm not claiming to be a Greek expert. I try to be humble and defer to others' Greek knowledge who have studied it. All I've done is a cursory compared to others. I've got tools, but I try to be judicious and listen to all sides and try to speak with knowledge where I can. And this, I'm showing you right here why sometimes it's translated in English as Gentiles and why sometimes as nations, even though the underlying word is the same, ethne, plural. Another example, Romans 4:17. 4:17. My eyesight's getting bad, Jason. It's getting old, 50 years old. All right. Therefore, it is of faith that it might be according to grace, so that the promise might be sure to all the seed, not only to those who are of the law, but also to those who are of the faith of Abraham. Notice it's not talking about descendants here, properly speaking, but it's talking about a religious dimension of those who are under law, which, yes, it happened to be a ethnic grouping, as opposed to those who are of the faith. Okay, so we're contrasting faith and law, not one DNA to another DNA. Although if you wanted to get into that level, you can. That's not Paul's surface framework here that he's talking about. It's a religious theological framework between law, faith, okay? Who are of the faith of Abraham, who is the father of us all. As it is written, I have made you a father of many nations. All right, so plural, could have used Gentiles there, but it wouldn't make any sense. I've made you the father of many Gentiles. No, it's nations. In the presence of him who we believe. Let's do one more, Revelation 11:9. Oh, God. This is just a waste of time in some ways, this language fundamentalism. It's just silly. But we got to start somewhere, and this Contra Israel-only series will begin here. All right. 11:9. Then those from the peoples, tribes, tongues, and nations will see their dead bodies 3.5 days. So it's translated nations. Then those from the peoples, tribes, tongues, if you put in there Gentiles, doesn't make any sense because we're talking about groupings, peoples, tribes, tongues, nations, okay? What's another example of where that the plural has to be referring to the group as opposed to individuals? Let's look at Ephesians 3:6. Way to find these is go eat popcorn. Galatians, Ephesians, Philippians, Colossians. I learned that a long time ago. Go eat popcorn. Okay, Ephesians 3:6. Oh that Paul's sentences are so long, it's hard to find the beginning of it. By which, when you read, you may understand my knowledge in the mystery of Christ, which in other ages was not made known to the sons of men, as it has now been revealed by the Spirit to his holy apostles and prophets, that the Gentiles should be fellow heirs of the same body. Okay, so if you plug in nations in there, that the nations should be fellow heirs. Clearly, he's talking about individuals from the nations, not the entire nations themselves. So that's why these translational issues aren't in there. It's not some futurist conspiracy trying to hide the truth that Jason DaCosta has uncovered, which he hasn't. As I said, it's old. It's old as British Israel. I don't know, maybe he didn't know that. All right, let's sum this up. This first video, Contra Jason DaCostaism. Is there anything else I want to mention? I wanted to say where ethnos in the Greek is translated Gentile in the context of early Christianity, it always implied non-Israelite. Here's an example, Matthew 10, 6 through 7. Jesus makes a distinction between the ethne, plural, the Gentiles, and the lost sheep of the house of Israel. Jesus says in the same sentence, don't go in the way of the Gentiles, rather go and find the lost sheep of the house of Israel. Therefore, right from Jesus' lips, there's a distinction between Gentiles and the lost sheep of the house of Israel. Now, did the Second Temple Jews not understand that the lost sheep of the house of Israel had been lost among the nations? No. They didn't know that, but they didn't lose a distinction either. They knew that the 10 tribes were lost, and they were out there somewhere. Josephus says they were out beyond the Sambatyon River, in numerous hordes of people that cannot be numbered. But they also had a distinction between that and just plain Jane, generic Gentiles, which was everybody. And Jesus betrays the same thing. Again, there's a distinction in Jesus' own words between the ethne, plural, the Gentiles, which is best translated as Gentiles because it appears he's talking about individuals of a group, but rather go to the lost sheep of the house. So we're talking about individuals of a grouping, which is house of Israel, the ones that got lost, the individuals. Another word, the Greek Hellenos, it just refers to a Greek person. Jason, that's bunked to say that it has some theological meaning, that it refers to, it has to refer to lost 10 tribes, people who speak Greek. That's ridiculous. Jason at the beginning of this mentioned about learning Hebrew. He doesn't know Hebrew. He's botched the Hebrew. And this is just, when I first heard him say that Goyim sometimes refers to Israel, when he should have said Goy, I was like, is this really true that Jason does not understand the difference between Goy and Goyim and how they're used? And sure enough, he repeats it. He repeated in this video, the truth about the word Gentile and what they never told you. Just checking my notes. So Jason doesn't distinguish between the singular and the plural and how it refers or doesn't refer to Israel. He made the weird statement that this word Gentile didn't exist. Well, it was a Latin word. The Old Testament was translated into the Greek. The Greek used ethnos. Gentile was it was from the English. Bro, come on, Jason. And he said in the Hebrew, no word like Gentile is ever used in the Old Testament. Hey, you're correct. The actual word was foreigner, ger. I was trying to think of the Nakri, ger. You're right. But again, it's Gentile. It's an English word based on a Latin word, okay? Yes, you are correct. You are a genius. It's not a word like that, I don't know what your point is there, but yeah, he says nowhere is the word Gentile used. LOL, it's a Greek word. It's not a Greek, it's an English word, I'm sorry, based on the Latin. Okay, at 1454, he says the word nations includes a group of common language speaking peoples, including Israel. Hagoyim never ever refers to Israelites whatsoever, or non-Israelite. Hagoyim, whenever it's in the construction of Hagoyim, never refers to Israel at all. Okay, Goyim and some in context when you see that Israel is being considered alongside other people groups, yes, but Hagoyim, it's always a separate designation. You have Israel and you have Hagoyim. You have Israel and the nations. Okay. I believe that's it. I'm at almost an hour. I hope I don't have any problems uploading this to YouTube. My time is very limited. I have to use the time when my wife is at work because she works on weekends, and because I like to spend time when I'm here with my wife. That's why our marriage is healthy. We've made it 26 years. Unlike many scoundrels who, because of their being scoundrels, ruined their families. So it's funny, a futurist, Lance Conley, spread something on the internet that he said, I bet Joe cheats on his wife while she's at work. He's the same mindset of these guys. I can't remember whether it was Jason or one of his sycophants that were commenting, said that because I'm reaching out to be friendly with Joel Sexton, who we've had our differences obviously, but I'm trying to mend fences with Joel, who I respect a lot with his knowledge. He's graciously given me some books, and we had a falling out because he thought that I was going to use Israel only against him in a debate, and he's had a bad experience, as many people do when they encounter the DaCosta cult. Anyway, I believe in mending bridges. Okay, that's why I reached out. Sam and I are dialoguing, and anyway, either Jason or one of his sycophants said, because they were referring to, and this is they exploit Joel's struggles in the past with drugs, and they refer to him as a drug addict and everything. So because I'm building a bridge with Joel, now apparently I'm an addict. So oh gosh, I'm not trying to, I'm not going to be disappointed if I don't change any minds. I'm just presenting. I don't have anything to gain or lose here. I'm on a journey, and I'm putting these up. Hopefully they'll be helpful to somebody. If whoever gets sucked into this and they're not willing to listen to reason, well, they weren't in a good place to begin with. All right. Scoundrel you are, and scoundrel you shall remain, is, to put it in biblical language. But some parts of it are attractive. The part of it that, in fact, they'll betray that they probably got into it with that because when you first get into it, you realize this is a way to see clearly that the law is completely gone. So there can't be any curse of the law. God can't be angry. There can't be any sin. All right. So that obviously, especially if you're from a fundamentalist background, which is usually always legalist, it screws up your mind and like crazy when you're in that and everything as a Christian. This is going to be a great breath of fresh air. Initially, you're going to see, whoa, I don't have to worry about anything. But then I'm telling you, I've seen it happen, play out. Everybody that's now pushing it has, as far as I can tell, has said that we're at least agnostic to mythicism, to it's all bunk, and in the words of Jason DeCosta, it's horseshit. The fruits, observe the fruits. I'm not sure when part 2 will come on. I'm sure this will give our friend Jason some material to roast me on, which doesn't bother me at all. In fact, I like the attention. Sometimes the level of discourse is irritating, but nonetheless, the attention is nice. I'm just a normal guy. I don't have a lot of followers, so I can use all the attention I can get. So have a good day. I'm signing off. God bless.